The impact was sharp and brutal. My head snapped to the side, and a high-pitched ringing echoed in my ears. My left cheek burned like fire. The entire grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel instantly fell dead silent. Everyone saw it. At the anniversary gala of Legacy Enterprises, in the presence of over 300 members of New York's business elite, a young woman who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere had just slapped me, the wife of the company's CEO, right across the face. I lost my footing, stumbling back. If I hadn't grabbed the edge of the banquet table, I would have fallen to the floor. My hand knocked over a crystal flute, and dark red wine spilled across the crisp white tablecloth, spreading like blood. The eyes of the entire room were fixed on me. Some gasped, some began to whisper, and others simply watched the show, champagne glasses halfway to their lips. I slowly raised my head and looked at the arrogant woman standing before me. She couldn't have been more than 22. She was wearing a limited edition haute couture gown, and around her neck rested a diamond collar worth at least $3 million. Beneath her flawless makeup, her eyes were practically dancing with triumph. She stood there, chin tilted up, like a peacock that had just won a turf war. Behind her stood my husband of 5 years. Conrad Vance, CEO of Legacy Enterprises, a supposed business genius, the dream of countless women, a wealthy and highly coveted catch. He didn't step forward to help me. He didn't even look my way. His gaze was entirely locked on this young woman, filled with a tenderness I had never seen before. A tenderness he had never once shown me, his legal wife. "I did that for myself," the young woman said, shaking out her hand. Her voice rang out clear, as if she had just done something completely justified. "You've taken up the space of Conrad's wife for 5 years. It's time to step aside." I pressed my hand to my burning cheek, staring her down. "And who are you?" "My name is Alyssa." She looped her arm through Conrad's, pressing her body against him. "Conrad loves me. If you care at all about whatever shreds of dignity you have left, sign the divorce papers quietly. Don't make a scene." I looked at Conrad. Finally, he shifted his gaze to my face. But in his eyes, there was no guilt. No sympathy. Only irritation. "Claire, don't cause a scene," he said. "Don't cause a scene." His mistress had just slapped me in front of Manhattan's elite. And he was telling me not to cause a scene. I clenched my fists so tightly, my nails dug into my palms. "Conrad, are you really just going to stand there and watch?" He frowned. His tone was ice cold. "Alyssa is pregnant. Her hormones are all over the place. Just let it go." "Pregnant, let it go." I heard something snap inside my head. For the past 5 years, I had given my blood, sweat, and tears to Legacy Enterprises. When Conrad's father died, the company's stock plummeted. It was me who leveraged my own family's connections to secure the $3 billion emergency bailout. When Conrad was surrounded by corporate sharks, it was me who entertained clients until 3 a.m., drinking until I ended up in Mount Sinai Hospital with a bleeding ulcer. Half of everything Legacy had achieved today was because of me. I held 51% of the company's shares, personally transferred to me by Conrad's father on his deathbed. The old man had held my hand and said, "Claire, Conrad has big ambitions, but sometimes he's a fool. I'm trusting the fate of Legacy to you. I'll rest easier knowing you're in charge." I had cried and nodded, swearing to protect his legacy. And now his son, my husband, was letting his mistress slap me in the face and telling me to just let it go. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Conrad, I am asking you one last time. Do you choose her or me?" Alyssa immediately tightened her grip on his sleeve, her eyes welling with crocodile tears. "Conrad, look at her threatening me. She's threatening you, too." Conrad wrapped his arm around Alyssa's shoulders and looked at me like I was a stranger throwing a senseless tantrum. "Claire, if you lay a single finger on Alyssa, we're getting a divorce." He said it so casually, as if he were discussing what to order for dinner. Whispers erupted around the ballroom. "Oh my God, Vance just admitted to the affair in front of everyone. Who is this Alyssa girl? She's pretty, but still just a mistress. I feel so bad for his wife." "Why? Didn't you hear him?" "Divorce. Looks like the Mrs. Vance title is about to be up for grabs." I heard every word, and my heart seized with a pain so sharp it felt like a physical fist crushing it. But I didn't cry. I had thought that 5 years of marriage deserved at least a drop of basic respect. But it turned out, in his eyes, I wasn't even worth a single hair on his mistress's head. "Divorce? Fine. I'll show you what a real divorce looks like." I slowly straightened my posture, tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear, and looked right into Alyssa's gloating face. "You said you're pregnant?" I asked. She pushed out her stomach, though it was perfectly flat. "Yes. It's Conrad's. So you'd better use whatever brain you have left and pack your bags." "I see," I nodded. "A baby for Conrad. Are you sure about that? Alyssa's expression faltered. What do you mean? Oh, nothing, I smiled. I just think your slap was a little weak. Before she could process my words, my arm swung in a massive arc. I slapped Alyssa across the face with every ounce of strength I had. Smack. The sound was 10 times louder than hers. Alyssa shrieked and crumpled to the side. Conrad scrambled to catch her. Claire, are you out of your damn mind? He roared. I ignored him. I pulled my arm back and struck her again. Smack. That's for having no shame. Smack. That's for wrecking a home. Smack. That's for using someone else's power to humiliate people. Every word was punctuated by a brutal slap. Alyssa's perfectly styled hair flew into a mess, her expensive makeup smeared, tears mixing with foundation to turn her into a pathetic, blotchy mess. She tried to dodge, but I grabbed a fistful of her hair, locking her in place. Claire, stop it. Conrad lunged at me. I kicked him back with the heel of my Louboutin and kept going. Smack, 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 smack. The last 5 hits were rapid fire. Alyssa's face swelled up like a balloon. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of her mouth. 10 slaps in total. She said she hit me for herself. Well, I just showed her what a return on investment looked like, with 10-fold interest. The ballroom was dead silent. Nobody dared to speak. Nobody dared to intervene. Conrad held Alyssa to Gem. Her Gem Sizzly, his face was purple with rage. He looked at me like he wanted to eat me alive. Claire, you are finished, he hissed through clenched teeth. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow morning. You won't get a single red cent in this divorce. I shook out my numb, stinging hand and pulled my iPhone from my clutch. Divorce? I looked at him dead in the eye. Do you honestly think legacy will still be yours after a divorce? He froze. Right there, in front of him and 300 guests, I dialed a number and put it on speakerphone. After 2 rings, a calm, older male voice answered. Miss Sterling? Arthur, I said. I am selling my entire 51% stake in Legacy Enterprises at market price. Execute the sale immediately. Conrad's face drained of all color. Claire, are you insane? He dropped Alyssa and lunged toward me. I took a step back, a cold smirk on my lips. When you told me to let it go, it never occurred to you that I might actually be insane. On the other end of the line, Arthur Hayes, my lead attorney, was clearly stunned, but his Wall Street instincts kicked in instantly. Miss Sterling, 51% of the shares. At current market valuation, that's roughly $4.07 billion. Are you absolutely certain? I'm certain. Find a buyer immediately. The price doesn't matter, but the deal must close tonight. Claire, you can't do this! Conrad's voice cracked. That's Vance family business. That's what my father left you. What your father left me is mine. I can sell it if I want. What does that have to do with you? Alyssa stopped crying. Covering her swollen face, she stared at me with wide eyes, finally realizing the magnitude of what was happening. $4 billion. 51% of legacy. If those shares fell into foreign hands, Conrad's title as CEO would be completely hollow. He only held 30% of the company. He wouldn't have voting control. Panic set in. Real, visceral panic. Claire, let's just talk about this calmly. His tone completely softened. I was wrong. I apologize. Alyssa. She's young. She's stupid. Don't take her seriously. Stupid? I laughed. She's stupid, and so are you. When you told me to step aside, why didn't you mention you were an idiot? Conrad's face flushed red, then pale. In front of 300 New York elites, he had never experienced such brutal humiliation. But he didn't dare explode, because my finger was hovering over the end call button. One more word from me, and legacy would change hands forever. Claire, let's go home. Let's talk, he pleaded, reaching out to grab my hand. Let's not make a circus out of this in public. A circus? I snatched my hand away. When she slapped me across the face, you didn't seem to think it was a circus. At that exact moment, the sound of shuffling papers came through the speakerphone. Miss Sterling, I have a buyer, Arthur said. They are willing to acquire the shares at a 10% premium. $4.47 billion will be wired to your accounts immediately. Do I have your authorization to close? I looked at Conrad. The last drop of blood vanished from his face. $4.5 billion. My finger hovered over the screen. I intentionally let 3 seconds of dead air hang in the room. During those 3 seconds, you could have heard a pin drop in the Plaza Ballroom. 300 pairs of eyes were glued to me and my phone. People were holding their breath. Some were gripping their martini glasses, while others discreetly hit record on their phones. Conrad's Adam's apple bobbed. Sweat beaded at his temples. Claire. His voice was a whisper, laced with a submission I had never heard from him. Please, calm down. Let's talk at home. Selling out in front of everyone. This doesn't benefit anyone. Benefit anyone? I lifted the phone slightly. I'm a woman whose husband just announced he's dumping her. I don't care about benefits anymore. Alyssa finally grasped the gravity of the situation. She dropped her hands, revealing her bruised face, and stared at Conrad in horror. Conrad. She can't actually sell them, right? Those are your family's shares. What right does she have? Conrad ignored her entirely. She didn't matter anymore. Claire, my father gave you those shares to protect legacy. He took a step forward, practically begging. If you do this, aren't you betraying his memory? I let out a dry laugh. When you let your mistress slap me in the face, were you thinking of his memory? When you announced you were divorcing me in front of 300 people, were you thinking of his memory? Conrad opened his mouth, but no words came out. Arthur's voice broke the silence. Miss Sterling, the buyer has confirmed the $4.47 billion. They are demanding immediate execution. What is your decision? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Conrad's eyes were bloodshot. He hissed through his teeth. Claire, if you dare sell them, I will never forgive you for as long as I live. Your forgiveness? I stared at him. And what exactly is the market value of that? I spoke directly into the phone. Arthur. I accept the offer. Bing. The Apple Wallet notification echoing in the silent ballroom sounded like a gunshot. Wire transfer received. $4.47 billion. I stared at the long string of zeros on my screen and suddenly felt the crushing irony of it all. 5 years. 5 years I had protected legacy, protected this household, protected this man. I thought if I worked hard enough, endured enough, he would eventually see my worth. And in the end, he brought a mistress to my face, let her hit me, and threatened me with divorce. Conrad looked like all the oxygen had been sucked from his lungs. He stumbled back 2 steps and crashed into a cocktail table, glasses shattered on the marble floor, red wine splashing onto his bespoke tuxedo trousers, but he didn't even flinch. Impossible, he muttered. How could you? That's family equity. Family? I turned the screen toward him so he could see the deposit. Conrad, get it through your head. Your father put these shares in my name. They belong to a Sterling, not a Vance. Alyssa was fully panicking now. She was dumb, but not that dumb. Without those shares, Conrad was just a figurehead CEO waiting to be fired. Conrad! She grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. What do we do now? Conrad violently shoved her away. He pushed her so hard she fell backward onto the floor. Get away from me, he roared. Alyssa looked up at him in pure disbelief. Conrad, you pushed me. I'm carrying your baby. A baby? Conrad looked down at her, his eyes wild. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. I watched the spectacle with absolute zero sympathy. Alyssa scrambled up. Her makeup was ruined, her lip bleeding. She looked like a wet rat. She turned to me, her eyes filled with hatred but overpowered by fear. You planned this, didn't you? She shrieked. You've wanted to sell the shares for a long time. You just used this as an excuse. An excuse? I looked at her. When you slapped me, you didn't seem to think it was an excuse. I put my phone away, pulled a makeup wipe from my clutch, and slowly wiped the smeared lipstick and faint red mark from my cheek. Alyssa, thank you. I tossed the wipe onto a tray. Thank you for slapping some sense into me. Suddenly, Conrad dropped to his knees. The entire ballroom gasped. The CEO of Legacy Enterprises, the Wall Street golden boy, the scion of old money, had just fallen to his knees in front of me, in front of 300 of his peers. Claire, I'm begging you. His voice was unrecognizable, raspy and broken. The shares are sold. Fine. I don't blame you. But just tell me who is the buyer. At least let me know who controls my family's company. I looked down at him. 5 years ago, at our wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral, this man had sworn to cherish me for the rest of his life. By year 2, he had a mistress. Year 3, another. By year 5, he brought one to a corporate gala to humiliate me. And now he was on his knees, begging for a name. You'll find out. Very soon. I grabbed my clutch and turned toward the ballroom doors. Behind me, I could hear Alyssa's pathetic sobbing and Conrad's furious, desperate shouting. But I didn't look back. The clicking of my stilettos against the marble floor was steady and sharp. At the exit, the doorman pulled the heavy brass doors open. The look in his eyes was one of sheer awe. Good evening, Mrs. Vance, he said quietly. Call me Miss Sterling, I corrected him. As of tonight, Mrs. Vance no longer exists. I stepped out onto Fifth Avenue. The night air was cool. Standing on the steps of the plaza, I took a deep breath. 5 years. 5 years locked in a gilded cage, playing the obedient corporate wife. I had learned to smile, to tolerate, to keep up appearances. And my reward? A public slap. I pulled out my phone and dialed. It was picked up on the first ring. Miss Sterling, Arthur's voice came through. Everything is finalized. Excellent. The money is in the account. Perfect. I've been waiting for this day a long time. Me too, Arthur. I hung up, turned, and looked at the hotel facade. Legacy's corporate banner was still projected in gold against the stone, looking incredibly imposing. But it had nothing to do with me anymore. I opened my Uber app. 3 minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The driver rolled down the window. Claire? Yes. I opened the door and slid into the leather seat. The driver checked the rearview mirror, clearly surprised to see a woman in a runway-ready gown getting into a car alone at midnight. Where to? The Street Regis. I had booked the presidential suite that morning, the exact moment I received a provocative text from Alyssa. I knew tonight would be my last night as Mrs. Vance. Her text had read, Conrad is going to publicly end things with you at the gala tonight. Be a good girl and leave quietly. When I read it, I wasn't angry. I didn't cry. I simply opened my contacts, found Arthur's number, and texted, Be ready. I'm liquidating tonight. The SUV glided to a halt outside the Street Regis. The doorman immediately recognized me. Mrs. Vance, he said, surprised. Miss Sterling, I corrected him again. He blinked, then quickly opened the heavy glass door. I walked into the opulent lobby, and the concierge practically jogged over. Miss Sterling, your suite is ready. The presidential suite for 7 nights, as requested. Thank you. I took the key card and stepped into the elevator. When the brass doors slid shut, I leaned back against the mahogany panels and finally closed my eyes. Tears silently rolled down my cheeks, not out of pain, but out of sheer relief. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I slept in the presidential suite for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, my phone had over 200 missed calls. All from Conrad, along with 80-something texts. I didn't bother reading them, I just swiped the notifications away. The last message was from Alyssa, sent at 3 a.m. You think you won, Claire? Conrad will bounce back, and you'll be on your knees begging us to take you back. I scoffed and blocked her number. After taking a long shower and changing into fresh clothes, I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window to eat room service. The Manhattan skyline sparkled under the morning sun. In the distance, I could see the Legacy Enterprises tower, its glass facade reflecting the blinding light. I took a bite of my croissant. My phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Miss Sterling. A deep, gravelly male voice came through the line. The final contract signatures for the share transfer are scheduled for 3 p.m. today. We need you there in person. All right. Text me the address. And one more thing. He paused. The buyer would like to meet you. Who is the buyer? You'll find out when you arrive. I hung up and finished my breakfast. To be honest, I was intensely curious. The fact that Arthur had secured a 10% premium overnight meant the buyer had deep pockets and a relentless desire to swallow Legacy whole. In Wall Street terms, anyone willing to overpay that much for a competitor's stock is either a madman or a sworn enemy of the Vance family. At 2:30 p.m., I stepped out in a sharp, tailored pantsuit, my makeup immaculate. In the Uber, the driver kept glancing at me. Heading to the financial district for work? Something like that. Tough crowd down there, he sighed. Nothing but sharks. I smiled and said nothing. The car pulled up to a massive, imposing glass tower in Fiji. Security stopped me at the turnstiles. I gave Arthur Hayes' name, they checked my ID, and respectfully escorted me to the VIP elevators. Arthur was waiting for me in a sprawling executive boardroom on the 50th floor. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and gold-rimmed glasses. He had been Richard Vance's personal attorney and one of the family's most trusted confidants. Miss Sterling. He stood up, his eyes reflecting a complicated mix of emotions. Are you absolutely sure about this? Arthur, I sat across from him. Didn't you hear the wire transfer notification yesterday? He sighed. I did. I just feel bad for the late Mr. Vance. I feel bad for him too. But his son proved he didn't deserve my loyalty. Arthur stayed quiet for a moment, then pulled a thick stack of documents from his leather briefcase. These are the transfer deeds. Review them. If everything is in order, we sign at 3. I flipped to the last page, saw the buyer's name, and froze. Arthur, the buyer is him? Yes. Arthur nodded slowly. It's him. I stared at the signature line for a full 10 seconds before I started laughing. No wonder. No wonder you found a buyer so fast. No wonder he was willing to pay a 10% premium. And no wonder he wanted to meet me. Miss Sterling, Arthur hesitated. I don't know if I should say this, but the late Mr. Vance had a history with the buyer. I can't disclose the details. But before he died, Mr. Vance asked me to hold on to a sealed letter. It was addressed to this specific man. What letter? I asked, stunned. I don't know the contents. Arthur adjusted his glasses. But Mr. Vance told me never to deliver it, unless it was an absolute emergency. When you called last night saying you were liquidating, I knew the emergency had arrived. I checked my Cartier watch. 2:45 p.m. What time is he getting here? 3 o'clock sharp. Just as the grandfather clock in the corner struck 3, the heavy oak doors opened. A man walked in. He was in his early 30s, easily half a head taller than Conrad. He wore a bespoke midnight blue suit that emphasized broad shoulders and a lean waist. He radiated a cold, aristocratic energy. His eyes were dark and piercing, carrying a weight that Conrad never possessed, a quiet, lethal confidence born from surviving actual storms, not just inheriting wealth. Seeing me, he stopped for a fraction of a second. Claire Sterling. I stood up. Damien Roth. Damien Roth, CEO of Roth Holdings, architect of the youngest corporate empire on the East Coast, a fixture on Forbes covers for 3 consecutive years, and Conrad Vance's absolute worst nightmare in the market. Damien walked over and sat across from me. His gaze lingered on my face. You look better than your photographs. And younger than in the magazines. He smirked, the corner of his lips curling up, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. Miss Sterling, $4.5 billion for your 51% stake in Legacy. You took a hit on the long-term valuation, I know. Yet you still sold it. Because I refuse to have anything to do with the Vance family ever again. As long as I hold those shares, I'm tied to Conrad. I don't want that. Damien paused. Are you divorced yet? Not officially. But yesterday, he announced to 300 people that he was divorcing me. Damien raised an eyebrow. Is he brain damaged? I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Mr. Roth, you didn't buy Legacy just to make a profit, did you? Of course not. Damien leaned back in his chair. I want to bury Conrad Vance. Not for the money, but because of one person. Who? Your father-in-law. Richard Vance. Silence hung in the boardroom. 10 years ago, Richard did me a massive favor, Damien said quietly. A favor that saved my family's life. Before he died, he wrote me a letter. It said that if his son turned out to be a scumbag, he wanted me to clean house. I froze. Arthur nodded silently, confirming the story. So, you see, Damien continued, even if you hadn't sold, I would have found another way to tear Conrad down. You just made it remarkably easy. He picked up the transfer deed, flipped to the final page, and signed his name with a heavy gold pen. It was done. The majority shareholder of Legacy Enterprises was now Damien Roth. Conrad Vance wouldn't last a week in the CEO chair. Watching him sign, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not vindictiveness. Not triumph. Just peace. Miss Sterling. Damien looked up, handing the pen to Arthur. Do you have any interest in joining Roth Holdings? What? I blinked. I've read your portfolio. Every major initiative at Legacy over the last 5 years was spearheaded by you. Conrad was just an empty suit posing for the cameras. You did the actual heavy lifting. I didn't expect him to know that. For 5 years at Legacy, you pulled a salary that was less than what Conrad spent on weekend golf trips, Damien said flatly. But your operational talent is worth 100 Conrad Vances. He stood up and extended his hand across the table. Roth Holdings. I'm offering you the position of Executive Vice President, an 8-figure base salary and 5% equity. I stared at his hand, hesitating. Why? Because I need ruthless talent. He paused. And because I don't think a woman like you should let some pathetic excuse for a man ruin her trajectory. The words were simple, but they carried a heavy, grounded truth. I reached out and shook his hand. I accept. Damien's hand was warm, his grip firm. When he let go, his smirk turned into a genuine smile. Welcome to Roth Holdings, Claire. By the time I walked out of the skyscraper, the sun was setting over the Hudson. I was standing on the curb waiting for my Uber when my phone rang. This time, it was Conrad's mother. My mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance. After a second of debate, I answered. Eleanor? Her voice was so shrill it practically pierced my eardrum. Claire, are you out of your mind? You sold Legacy shares? That's what Richard left you. How could you do this to us? Eleanor, I said calmly. When your son brought a mistress to a gala and let her slap me across the face, where was this outrage? Why were you silent? Dead air on the line. That's marital business. Eleanor's tone wavered, trying to soften. Couples fight. Conrad is young. He's foolish. As his wife, you should have just turned a blind eye. Again with this nonsense. Eleanor, the shares are sold, the money has cleared. There is nothing left to discuss. Give the money back, Eleanor shrieked. That is Vance family money. It is my money. The shares were legally mine. If you have an issue, have your lawyers call mine. Claire, don't think that just because you have billions now you're untouchable, she screamed. You're a divorced woman with dirty money. You think you'll ever live in peace? People will spit when they hear your name. Let them. They won't just be spitting at me. I hung up. I knew Eleanor Vance too well. To her, the only things that mattered were high society optics and her son's career. I had just been a useful tool to manage both. Now the tool had broken the machine, and she was terrified. But it wasn't my problem anymore. I got into my Uber and gave the driver a new address. The Vance family estate in the Hudson Valley. When I arrived, I walked into the grand foyer, where a massive oil portrait of Richard Vance hung over the fireplace. I wanted to say goodbye. The estate manager, Thomas, saw me and froze. Mrs. Vance. Thomas. I'm just here to see Richard. He looked at me, his eyes slightly red. Ma'am, I heard about what happened last night. I am so sorry. It's over now. I walked into the parlor and stood before Richard's portrait. The painting captured a kind old man with a warm smile, exactly how he looked the day I met him. I sold the shares. I whispered to the painting. I'm sorry. I couldn't save legacy. I took a shaky breath. But your son didn't deserve it. If you were alive, you wouldn't have wanted me to endure this, right? The painted man couldn't answer, but in my heart, I knew he wouldn't blame me. When he lay dying, holding my hand, his eyes had been full of guilt. He knew who his son was. He knew the Vance family would chew me up. That was why he gave me the shares. It was his way of giving me an escape hatch. Thank you, Richard. I'm going to be okay. From the estate, I had the driver take me straight to Conrad's private office in Midtown. Not the Legacy headquarters, but a discreet penthouse suite he leased under a shell company. He had several mistresses, and he kept a nest for each of them. This was where he brought Alyssa. When I walked in, Conrad was sitting on a leather sofa, chain smoking. Alyssa was nowhere to be seen. Seeing me, he immediately crushed the cigarette in an ashtray and stood up. Claire. His voice was awful, completely hollowed out. Dark circles bruised his under eyes. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie undone. In 24 hours, he had aged 10 years. What do you want? I pulled a manila folder from my bag and tossed it onto the glass coffee table. Divorce papers. Sign them. Conrad looked down, his face darkening. Asset division? I get nothing? He snapped his head up. You're leaving me with absolutely nothing? Yes. Your condos, your cars, your mother's trust fund, I don't want a dime of it. But you aren't getting a single cent from me either. Claire! He slammed his fist on the table. My cars, my condos, that's Vance property. You walked away with $4 billion, and you want me to leave with zero? The $4 billion is mine. It has zero to do with you. Conrad ground his teeth, his chest heaving. Do you know what people are going to say? That Conrad Vance was kicked out by his wife with nothing but the shirt on his back? How am I supposed to show my face in this city? Why do I care how you show your face? I stared him down. When you watched Alyssa slap me, did you care how I showed my face? He opened his mouth but couldn't form a word. Sign it. Don't waste my time. He didn't move. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. If you don't sign this right now, I am leaking the video of you on your knees begging me at the gala to TMZ and Twitter. 300 people were filming. Did you really think you could cover it up? Conrad went ghost pale. You have 5 minutes, Conrad. If it's not signed, the world watches the CEO of Legacy begging like a dog. He looked at me with venomous hatred, but his hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed his name so hard the paper nearly tore. When he was done, he threw the pen against the wall and snarled, "You are going to regret this." I won't. I slipped the papers back into my bag. The only thing I regret is marrying you. I turned and walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, I paused, not looking back. By the way, tell Alyssa to take her prenatal vitamins. After all, it's the last child you'll ever be able to afford. Conrad screamed behind me, sweeping everything off the glass table in a violent crash. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw him run into the hallway, his face twisted in pure rage, hammering his fists against the metal doors. But his screams were trapped on the other side. I leaned against the mirrored wall and let out a long breath. It was over. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of patience. 5 years of humiliation. Done. For the first month after the divorce, I did absolutely nothing. I stayed in my suite at the Street Regis. I ate room service, slept, binge-watched Netflix, scrolled through my phone, and occasionally went down to the spa. Arthur sent me daily updates on the corporate takeover. Damian Roth had officially ousted Conrad as CEO of Legacy Enterprises. Conrad was stripped of his board seat. They even locked him out of his office. Rumor had it that the moment Alyssa realized Conrad was broke and powerless, she packed her bags and vanished. Whether she kept the baby or not, no one knew. Eleanor Vance called me over 40 times. I didn't answer a single one. On the 41st try, she left a weeping voicemail. Claire, I was wrong. Please come back. Conrad realizes his mistake. I blocked her number too. In the second month, Damian Roth called me. Rested enough, Claire? His smooth baritone voice hummed through the speaker. Time to get to work. Damian, I haven't officially decided if I'm starting at Roth Holdings yet. You gave me your word. I changed my mind. 3 seconds of silence. Then, Damian spoke. All right, come to a gala with me this Saturday. Treat it as a trial run. If you decide Roth Holdings isn't for you, I won't push it. What gala? A real estate launch in Tribeca. I need a +1. Don't you have an assistant? I do. But I need a +1 who makes a statement. Are you up for it? I thought about it and agreed. I was getting bored anyway. Saturday night. Wearing a stunning black Tom Ford gown, I arrived at the venue. Damian was waiting by the red carpet. He wore a crisp white tuxedo jacket that made him look even taller, practically radiating power. Seeing me, his eyes flared with approval. You look incredible. Thank you. He offered his arm, and we walked inside. The room was packed with the city's heavy hitters. The moment they saw me on Damian Roth's arm, the atmosphere shifted. Is that Claire Sterling, Conrad's ex-wife? What is she doing with Damian Roth? I heard she sold him her legacy shares for $4 billion. Jesus, so she's with Roth now? They aren't together, idiot. They're business partners. I heard the murmurs, keeping my face perfectly neutral. Damian leaned down and whispered near my ear. Used to it? I've survived worse in the last 5 years. I smiled faintly. He chuckled and let it go. We sat at the head table with Roth Corp's executive team. Seeing me, they all stood up to greet me respectfully. Miss Sterling. An honor to have you. I engaged them in polite, sharp conversation, holding my own effortlessly. Halfway through the presentation, a commotion broke out near the entrance. I turned around and almost burst out laughing. It was Conrad. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit, probably off the rack, his hair was a mess, and he had lost an alarming amount of weight. He stood at the doors, staring directly at me, more specifically at my hand resting on the table near Damian's. Claire! He pushed past a waiter and marched toward our table, his voice like grinding sandpaper. You're with Damian Roth? The entire room went dead quiet. Every eye locked onto the three of us. Damian stood up, smoothly placing himself between me and Conrad. Mr. Vance. This is a private Roth Holdings event. I don't believe you're on the guest list. Conrad didn't even look at him. He glared at me. Claire, it's been 2 months since the divorce. And you're already parading around with Roth? Have you been sleeping with him this whole time? I stood up and stepped up next to Damian. Conrad, when you brought your mistress to our corporate event and let her hit me, did it ever occur to you that I might find someone better? Conrad's face turned violently red. You planned this. You sold him the shares, you got into his bed, you did all of this just to get revenge on me. Revenge? I scoffed. Do you honestly think you're worth the effort? Conrad shook with rage and reached out, trying to grab my arm. Before he could even make contact, Damian's hand shot out, catching Conrad by the wrist in a vice grip. Mr. Vance. Damian's voice dropped to a lethal register. If you try to touch her again, I will make sure you can't even afford that cheap suit you're wearing. Conrad tried to jerk his arm away, but Damian didn't budge. Conrad's knuckles turned white, his expression shifting from blind rage to humiliating defeat. Let go of me, he hissed. Damian shoved his arm back, standing like a brick wall in front of me. Conrad stumbled back, looked at Damian, then at me. His eyes were a chaotic mess of regret, anger, and despair. Claire, you're going to regret this. You said that last time. I'm doing fantastic. Conrad's jaw trembled. He turned and practically fled the room. He walked with a slight limp. I found out later that after losing Legacy, he had drowned in debt, and his loan sharks had paid him a physical visit. After he left, the gala resumed. But the way people looked at me had permanently changed. It wasn't pity anymore. It was reverence. A woman betrayed by her husband not only didn't break, she liquidated his empire, sold it to his worst enemy, walked away a billionaire, and was now standing shoulder to shoulder with Wall Street's apex predator. Who would dare cross her? After the gala, Damien drove me back to the Street Regis in his Maybach. You handled yourself well, he noted casually. Meaning? You didn't flinch. You didn't back down from him. Why would I? I've already lost the worst thing I could lose. I have nothing to be afraid of. Damien glanced at me, his expression unreadable. He pulled up to the hotel. As I reached for the door handle, he spoke. Claire, I expect you in the Roth Tower at 8 a.m. on Monday. The EVP office is ready. I looked back at him and smiled. I'll see you Monday. On my very first day at Roth Holdings, I learned one unavoidable truth. Damien Roth was an absolute machine. He was at his desk by 6 a.m. and rarely left before midnight. In meetings, he was ruthless, cutting off executives who waffled and tearing apart bad pitches without a second of hesitation. The entire C-suite was terrified of him. Even the 60-year-old board members lowered their eyes when he walked in. But with me, he possessed an unnatural patience. Claire, this projection model needs tightening. The underlying logic is flawed. Claire, the Q3 data in this slide is off. Run it again. Claire, you're leading the acquisition pitch this afternoon. I'm just sitting in. When he told me to redo something, there was no irritation, no shouting. He corrected me the way a master craftsman corrects an apprentice. If I failed once, I tried again. Failed twice, tried a third time. And I adapted rapidly. Within 3 months, I closed a $300 million tech acquisition on my own. Within 6 months, I signed the largest overseas logistics contract in Roth Corp's history. By the 9-month mark, Damien stood before the board of directors and nominated me for chief operating officer. The vote was unanimous. That night, he took me to an exclusive, invite-only omakase sushi spot in Tribeca to celebrate. We had the private dining room to ourselves. Congratulations, Madam COO. He raised a glass of Yamazaki whiskey. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I clinked my sake cup against his glass. He took a sip, set the glass down, and looked at me intensely. Claire, have you thought about what comes next? Next in the pipeline? The European merger. Not work. He cut me off gently. Life. You aren't just going to live in that boardroom forever. You need a home. A real life. I froze, my chopsticks hovering over a piece of toro. Damien, are you playing matchmaker for me? No. He stared dead into my eyes. I'm asking myself if I'm the man who can give you that home. Silence flooded the tiny room. I didn't know what to say. I know it might be early to say this, Damien continued, his voice steady. But I don't believe in wasting time. I want you. I've wanted you since the second you walked into that boardroom with Arthur Hayes. Damien, I just got out of a horrific divorce. I know. I was deeply betrayed. I know. It might be a very long time before I can fully trust a man again. I know, but I have nothing but time. He spoke about it with the same absolute, unshakable certainty he used during billion-dollar mergers. I looked at him and finally smiled. You are genuinely terrible at flirting. I am well aware. That's why I need you to teach me. I didn't say yes that night, but I didn't say no. I told him I needed time. He said, take it. And he waited. For 3 months, he never pressured me. At work, we were a lethal corporate duo. Outside of work, he maintained a respectful distance. Exactly as promised, until one afternoon, the balance tipped. I was going over contracts in my corner office when my desk phone buzzed. It was the lobby receptionist. Miss Sterling, there is a man downstairs causing a disturbance, he claims. He claims he's your ex-husband. I dropped my pen, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down. On the plaza outside the Roth Tower, Conrad was on his knees. He was wearing a filthy windbreaker, his hair matted and greasy. He was holding up a piece of cardboard with Sharpie scrawled across it. Claire, I was wrong. Please forgive me. A crowd had already gathered. New Yorkers were snapping photos, recording TikToks, and pointing. I frowned and dialed building security. Remove him. Security guards jogged out, but Conrad refused to move. He plastered himself to the concrete, screaming up at the skyscraper. Claire! I was wrong. I never should have let Alyssa touch you. I never should have said those things. Please take me back. The guards tried to pull him up, but he fought them, thrashing like a wild animal. The crowd multiplied. Tourists across the street were stopping to film. I stood at the glass, feeling absolutely nothing. A year ago, seeing Conrad on his knees might have broken my heart. Not today. Because he wasn't begging for my heart. He was begging for his wealth, his status, his comfortable life. My cell phone rang. An unknown number. I picked it up. Conrad's pathetic, sobbing voice poured through the speaker. Claire, I'm begging you, please, just loan me some money. My mother is in the hospital. She needs heart bypass surgery. I have nothing left. I don't have money for you. She needs the surgery, Claire. It's $300,000. They won't operate without payment. I don't have that kind of money for you. He wailed like a child. Claire, please. For the sake of everything we used to be. Save my mother. I let a beat of silence pass. Conrad. When you brought Alyssa to that gala and let her slap me, were you thinking about everything we used to be? Silence on his end. When you tried to leave me with absolutely nothing, were you thinking about everything we used to be? Claire, I was wrong. I see it now. I swear to God. Do you know what your real mistake is, Conrad? It's not that you brought a mistress into our marriage. It's that you genuinely believe I am weak enough to forgive you. I hung up and blocked the number. Down below, security finally got tired of playing nice. They grabbed Conrad by his arms and physically dragged him off the plaza. He was thrashing and screaming, "You can't do this. I am her husband. I am her husband!" They tossed him onto the public sidewalk. He lay there in the dirt, too exhausted to get up. I walked back to my desk and opened my laptop. 5 minutes later, my office door swung open. Damien walked in, holding a steaming cup of coffee. I heard what happened downstairs. He set the mug on my desk. Are you all right? I'm fine. It's not the first time. He sat in the chair across from me, watching me take a sip. Claire, you stood by that window for 10 minutes. You didn't shed a single tear. Why would I? Most women would have broken down. But not you. You are 10 times the man he ever was. I looked over my coffee mug at him. Damien? You were downstairs, weren't you? I was in the lobby, yes. If I had needed help, would you have stepped in? Immediately. But you didn't need it, because you can handle your own wars. He stood up, walked to the door and paused, looking back at me. That, Claire, is exactly why I'm in love with you. He shut the door. I sat there, gripping the warm ceramic mug, staring out the window. Down below, the street was clear. Conrad was gone. The Manhattan sunset was bleeding orange and pink across the sky, reflecting off the glass towers in a blinding golden glow. I finished my coffee and went back to work. The footage of Conrad on his knees blew up the internet. TikTok and X were flooded with the video under the headline, "Broke Ex, Billionaire Begs Ex-Wife for Mercy." Within 3 days, the clip had over 20 million views. The comment sections were merciless. Karma is real. Imagine fumbling a billionaire baddie for a side piece. He let his mistress hit his wife and now he's begging? Throw him in the Hudson. Where's the side chick now? Crickets. Oh, I heard the mistress got pregnant to trap him, then bolted the second he lost his CEO title. Typical. There were a few comments criticizing me. $300K is a drop in the bucket for her. Refusing to pay for his mom's surgery is pure evil. They were married for 5 years. Have some basic human empathy, but they were quickly drowned out. Where was his empathy when he humiliated her? Let him rot. Don't give him a dime, queen. I didn't read the comments. My PR assistant showed me the analytics cautiously. Miss Sterling, the internet is having a field day. Do we need to deploy the crisis management team? No, I said, signing a contract. Let them talk. I haven't done anything wrong. A month later, Damien walked into my office and closed the door. I paid for Eleanor Vance's bypass surgery, he said flatly. I dropped my pen and stared at him. What? You gave him $300,000? I sent it anonymously, from an LLC attached to your name. Damien, I owe them nothing. I know you don't, but I also know you. If Eleanor died because you refused to pay, you would carry that guilt forever, even if you pretended you didn't. I paid it so you wouldn't have to carry the moral weight. I stared at the most feared corporate raider in New York, and suddenly, my vision blurred with tears. Damien, you are a terrible person. Why? Because you make it completely impossible for me to keep my walls up. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Then drop the walls. And try loving me. 3 months later, Roth Holdings hosted its annual charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was the social event of the season. When Damien led me up the Met steps, the paparazzi flashes were blinding. I wore a custom, silver-white Vera Wang mermaid gown. My hair was swept into an elegant updo, and resting on my collarbone was a $30 million sapphire necklace, a gift from Damien. Nervous? He asked quietly over the roar of the photographers. No. Should I be? Good. He squeezed my hand. Because I'm planning a hostile takeover tonight. Excuse me? He just smirked. Inside the Temple of Dendur, Damien took the stage to give his keynote address. He spoke about Rothcorp's record profits, future tech acquisitions, and praised the executive team. Then, the tone shifted. Tonight, I want to make an announcement that is purely personal. He locked eyes with me from the stage. The massive room fell utterly silent. I, Damien Roth, have never begged anyone for anything in my entire life. But tonight, I am going to beg one specific person. He stepped down from the stage, walked directly to my table, and in front of 1,000 billionaires, politicians, and A-listers, dropped to one knee. He pulled a velvet box from his tuxedo pocket. Inside, blinding under the museum lights, sat a flawless 10-carat diamond ring. Claire Sterling, marry me. The room erupted. People were screaming, applauding, standing up from their tables. I looked down at him, tears welling in my eyes. You really know how to corner a market, don't you? I know a high-value asset when I see one. What's your answer? I gave him my left hand. Yes. When he slid the ring onto my finger, the applause was deafening. The flashes from the press cameras fired like strobe lights. Everyone witnessed it, including a man standing in the shadows by the catering exit. Conrad Vance had snuck in through a service door. Wearing a cheap, frayed jacket, he stood behind a pillar, watching the stage. His eyes were red, his lips trembling. It looked like his very soul had been ripped out of his chest. He didn't know that on the other side of the room, bussing tables for the catering company, was Alyssa. She was thin, exhausted, wearing a cheap uniform with zero makeup on her face. She was staring at me too, clutching a tray of champagne flutes, looking utterly devastated. The next morning, Page 6 ran a photo of Conrad sitting on the museum steps outside, head in his hands, weeping uncontrollably. Alyssa was spotted arguing with her catering manager, getting fired on the spot. The headline read, "The ex and the mistress watch the billion-dollar proposal." The internet tore them to shreds. Best revenge arc of the decade. Damien Roth is the ultimate upgrade. Rich, handsome, and obsessed with her. Conrad got exactly what he deserved. I read the articles on Damien's iPad while we sat in the back of his Maybach. I couldn't help but laugh. Reading the funny papers? Damien leaned over, glancing at the screen, and smiled. Happy? Incredibly. He pulled me into his shoulder and kissed my forehead. It only gets better from here. I leaned against him, watching the Manhattan skyline roll by. A year ago, I had left a gala alone in an Uber, crying silently in the dark. Today I was engaged to the most powerful man on Wall Street, with billions in my name. The universe really is a brutal equalizer. Let people drag you through the mud. Eventually, you grow out of it and bloom. The week after our engagement, Damien insisted on taking me on a drive upstate. Where are we going? I asked. To pay respects. We pulled up to the Vance family estate in the Hudson Valley. What does my former father-in-law have to do with you? I asked, genuinely confused. He saved my life, Damien said quietly before we got out of the car. 10 years ago, my father was framed for corporate fraud. Our company was facing bankruptcy and federal indictment. Richard Vance secretly stepped in, wired us a massive anonymous loan, and kept us afloat long enough to clear our name. He never told me that, I whispered. He never told anyone. He was the kind of man who did good things in the dark. When I finally found out and tried to repay him, he refused. What did he say? He said, keep it. If my son ever turns out to be a failure, do me a favor and clean house for me. I was speechless. So you see, Damien said, unbuckling his seatbelt, I bought legacy for you, but I also bought it for him. Thomas, the estate manager, opened the heavy doors, shocked to see us. Miss Sterling, you're back. I came to see Richard, Thomas. Thomas looked at Damien. This is my fiancé, I said. Thomas smiled softly. Right this way, ma'am. I stood before Richard's portrait. I'm back, Richard, I whispered. I sold the company to Damien. Forgive me. Damien stepped up next to me and bowed his head respectfully. Mr. Vance, I fulfilled your request. Legacy is under my control and thriving. As for your son, Damien paused. I will let him live his life. Because that is what Claire wants. I looked at Damien, my heart swelling with warmth. From the estate, Damien drove us to a private, gated property in Connecticut. What is this? I bought the land a few months ago, he said, pulling into a sprawling driveway leading up to a massive, beautifully modern stone mansion. This is our home. The house was breathtaking, but what caught my eye immediately was a massive cluster of blooming purple bushes in the front courtyard. Lilacs? I gasped. How did you know I love lilacs? Your assistant. She mentioned you planted them at the Vance estate, and you always kept fresh cuttings in your office. I walked over and touched the soft, fragrant petals. I had planted them the week I married Conrad. He never even noticed they existed, let alone what they smelled like. Damien wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. Now, every spring, I get to look at the lilacs with you. I turned around, the afternoon sun softening his sharp jawline. Damien, you are absolutely nothing like your Wall Street reputation. What's my reputation? A cold-blooded corporate sociopath, he laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm only human with you. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Claire. It's Alyssa. Her voice was pathetic, raspy from crying. What do you want? I asked flatly. I want to apologize. I was wrong. I never should have hit you. I never should have taken Conrad. Did you call just to tell me that? No. She sobbed. I need to know where Conrad is. He owes me money. I took out loans for him and I can't find him. I almost laughed. Alyssa, your financial issues with Conrad are not my problem. Lose my number. I hung up. She called back 10 times. I ignored all of them. Finally, she texted. If you don't tell me where he is, I'm coming to find you. I know where you work. I forwarded the text to Damien. 3 minutes later, he replied, handled. She won't ever contact you again. I don't know what strings Damien pulled, but Alyssa completely vanished from my orbit. I later heard she was sued by her creditors, filed for bankruptcy, and had to move back to the Midwest to live in her parents' basement. The new guy she was seeing scammed her out of her last few $1,000s. As for Conrad, rumors faded. Some said he moved to Florida to sell timeshares. Some said he was working construction in New Jersey. Wherever he was no longer a part of my universe. 3 months before the wedding, Damien handed me a thick legal binder. What's this? I asked. I'm transferring 30% of Legacy's voting shares back into your name. I stared at the paperwork in shock. Are you out of your mind? That's easily worth $2 billion. You're just giving it to me? I'm not giving it. I'm returning it. Your father-in-law saved my family. This is my debt to him. Plus, those shares belong to you. I was just keeping them warm. Damien, do you know what the press will say? They'll say I have you completely whipped. He laughed out loud. Let them say it. Are you worried? No. But shouldn't you be? You're my wife, Claire. What's mine is yours. Giving you equity is just standard operating procedure. He handed me a Mont Blanc pen. Sign it, and then I'm taking you somewhere. I signed. He drove us straight to the Manhattan City Clerk's office. City Hall? I asked. To get our marriage license? To get married. Today? I've waited long enough. I looked at the grand municipal building and suddenly felt a wave of nerves. Damien, are you sure? I'm a divorced woman with a lot of baggage, and I'm a ruthless corporate raider. We're a perfect match. My eyes welled up. You really do know exactly what to say. Only to you. We walked inside. The ceremony was incredibly simple. Signatures, a vow exchange, a quick photo. When the city photographer told us to smile, Damien didn't look at the camera. He looked down at me with a tenderness so deep I could have drowned in it. And right as the shutter clicked, I smiled. A real, blindingly happy smile. When we walked out of City Hall, Damien tucked the marriage certificate into his jacket and pulled out a small, heavy piece of cardstock. What's this? Your new business card. I took it. It read, Claire Sterling, Roth, President, Roth Holdings. President? I gasped. I'll remain chairman of the board. You'll run the company as president. Together, we're going to make Roth Holdings untouchable. I looked at this man and genuinely believed I must have saved the world in a past life to deserve him. Damien, I love you. It was the first time I had said it to him. He froze, his breath catching, before a massive, boyish smile broke across his face. I love you too. Since the day I met you, during our first year of marriage, we were a force of nature. Damien and I ran Roth Holdings seamlessly. He handled the macro strategy. I handled the aggressive operational execution. Profits doubled. The Wall Street Journal wrote that Damien Roth marrying Claire Sterling was the greatest merger in corporate history. In our second year, I founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women recover from domestic abuse, financial coercion, and severe infidelity. I called it the Lilac Foundation. Why lilacs? Damien asked when I showed him the incorporation papers. Because you love lilacs, and because they symbolize rebirth. I want every woman who comes to us to have a second chance at life. On the night of the foundation's launch gala, I stood at the podium in a packed ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria. Over 1,000 people were in attendance. A little over 2 years ago, I said into the microphone, at a gala very much like this one, my husband's mistress slapped me across the face. My husband stood by, watched it happen, and threatened to divorce me if I defended myself. The room was pin-drop silent. In that moment, I thought my life was over. But I didn't break. I didn't cry. I didn't beg him to love me. Instead, I did one simple thing. I liquidated his company and walked away with $4 billion. A ripple of laughter and applause washed through the crowd. I don't say this to brag about money. I say this to remind you that a woman must never hand her entire destiny over to someone else. You can love deeply, but you must never be entirely dependent. You can sacrifice for your family, but you must never lose yourself. The ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. The Lilac Foundation is here for anyone who has endured what I endured. We provide aggressive legal counsel, psychological trauma therapy, and career placement so that women can stand on their own 2 feet again. Because every woman deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. After the speech, I was surrounded by women thanking me. One woman, her eyes red from crying, grabbed my hands. Miss Sterling, my husband has been cheating on me for 3 years. I've been terrified to leave because I have no money and no degree. But listening to you tonight, I'm going to file for divorce. I squeezed her hands. When you do, come to the foundation. Our doors are open for you. She threw her arms around me and wept. That evening, I arrived back at our Connecticut estate. Damien was in the massive chef's kitchen, wearing a casual apron, searing scallops in a cast-iron pan. He didn't even turn around when he heard my heels on the hardwood. The speech was phenomenal, he said. You watched? I streamed it. My wife is a powerhouse. I walked up behind him and wrapped my arms around his waist, resting my cheek against his broad back. Damien. Thank you. For what? For proving to me that good men actually exist. He turned off the stove, turned around, and pulled me into a deep embrace. You deserve the world, Claire. We ate dinner outside on the patio under the blooming lilac bushes. The moon was full, the spring air heavy with the sweet scent of the flowers. Eating the meal my husband cooked for me, I suddenly remembered this exact night 2 years ago. I had been sitting in the back of an Uber, crying silently in the dark, my face throbbing from a slap. Tonight, I was sitting in my own mansion, eating a home-cooked meal with the man I loved, controlling a massive corporate empire. My phone buzzed on the patio table. An unknown number. Claire, it's Conrad. I know you hate me. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't deserve you. I hope you're happy. I stared at the glowing screen for a few seconds. I typed one word. Okay. Then I deleted the thread and blocked the number. Damien walked out carrying a bowl of fresh fruit. Who was that? Spam? Just spam. He set the bowl down, not pressing the issue, and sat next to me. Claire, next month, clear your calendar. We're taking a trip. Where to? Anywhere you want. I want to go to Antarctica, I joked. Done. Antarctica it is. I'm kidding. I'm not. He pulled out his phone and actually started looking at luxury icebreaker expeditions. The 15th works perfectly. I watched him seriously searching for flights to the South Pole, and my eyes stung with happy tears. This man never spoke in flowery poetry, but every single promise he ever made, he kept. He promised to ruin my enemies, and he did. He promised me a home, and he gave me one. He promised to look at the lilacs with me, and here we were. Now he said we were going to Antarctica. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, we were going. I leaned my head against his shoulder and looked up at the stars. Damien, sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. You're not. It's real. How can you prove it? He leaned down and kissed me softly. Dreams are never this good. I smiled, my heart incredibly full. The stars twinkled above us. The lilacs swayed in the night breeze. New York is a massive city with millions of people and millions of stories. But my story had finally found its perfect ending. No, not an ending. A new beginning.